The previous video that we did how to tack and gather the woodland Cree moccasin. So we measured and we tacked and proceeded to finish it up so that it was like this here when we turned it the correct way. So today what we need to learn is how to finish off the heel. So we're going to show you how to tack that and how to cut it. So this one isn't completely sewn, but this one is. So I'm just going to show you how you would tack this. So you're going to fold the heel together evenly like that. And you're going to insert a welt into the seam. And for a beginner, you can measure from this fold here up to here to be 3/4 of an inch. So you want to make sure that your heel is the same. So what you can do is measure from this center up. And then you're just going to hand stitch again with the overhand stitch. And you don't want to go too close when you're stitching, and you don't want to go too deep. So you would finish proceeding to sew up here. I'm just going to pretend that we went all the way to the end and knotted it off. And then you have to cut in. You're measuring up 3/4 of an inch and cutting directly in at 3/4 of an inch. So right at the back of where you started sewing, you would cut in 3/4 of an inch. So you'll have, when you fold it, it's going to look like this, where it's this little, and you can use the one, if you did one moccasin already, you can use that to measure to make sure, okay, yes, we're going to have the same size of heel by measuring the other one. Then you'd cut that off. And you can use the piece that you've cut off. So you could use this piece, insert it into the opening here. So you insert it in there, and then you're going to stitch overhanded across so that it ends up looking like this one. So it was stitched down here, the heel, and across. Then you would rub these seams and then turn it the correct way, and then you have your heel of your moccasin. So what we're going to do is make the woodland Cree mukluk, and we need to find out the measurements for making the top tube for the leg and attach it to the foot. So in order to find the length of what we're going to need is you're going to measure your leg. Usually you'd measure the largest part of your calf around. And you want to kind of flex your leg because your leg expands. So here, my largest part of my leg is around 16 inches. So what I like to do is add 2.5 to 3 inches to there. So the measurement here, if I went, would be 18.5. I'm adding 2.5 inches. So 18.5 around my leg. And then we want to measure from about 1.5 inches or 2 fingers below the kneecap is where we're going to measure from there for length to the bend in our foot, in our ankle, I mean. So that measurement from the knee to the bend is 11 inches. From there, from 2 inches below the kneecap to the bend is 11 inches. So we know we have to go 18.5 by 11. So that's how we get these panel measurements. So this top panel is this area where we decorate. And these middle panels here these are the ones that go here, and you need 4, and there's 2 of one color and 2 of an opposite color. So in the Woodland Cream Mukluks style, there's always usually 2 colors, and then they're offset. So this is the top band, and these are the middle sections that we need. So you would cut 4 black, 4 burgundy, 2 of the burgundy panels for the top. Now these middle panels are where you're going to decorate. So what you would want to do is find the center. You would mark center and the center of the width. And then that way you know where your design goes. With this, it's using like a decorated braid material that you could buy and rickrack. But if you were beading a design, you would want to do mirror image. So either you can make them facing each other if they're birds or animals, or you can have them facing away from each other. But you wouldn't put a design where if it was a moose running this way, you wouldn't want the moose running the same direction on the other one. Otherwise it looks like you have 2 of the same legs. So that's the decoration for the top up here. Now, for these middle panels, what we do is you'll have your middle panel once it's fully decorated. There. Now 4 of these have to fit in across. So you have the 2 dark ones and the 2 yellow. So they're going to get sewn so that they're offset like that. So that's why if I lay it out here and you notice that it's going to be 2 inches longer here is because you have all these seam allowances. So you have a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch here, and you have 4 of those, so that equals that 2 inches. Because when we sew this all together and we make a tube and we sew this top decorated band together, they should equal out. So I'll turn this finished one inside out so you can see how it's stitched. So you'll see how all these little panels are sewn with the sewing machine together, and then they're all hand stitched so your seam stays open. And you'd want to use the same color. So if I'm doing the yellow side, I would use yellow thread. If I'm hand tacking the black part, I want to use black thread. So you'd hand tack all of those seams open, and then they get sewn with the sewing machine together. And then you're hand stitching all of these seams open again so that you don't have a big, deep, bulky ridge rubbing on your leg. So you'll see where the back is, your back matches up. So the center of the back of your tube here should get in the center of this black in the back. Because eventually when we sew our mukluk bottom, the moccasin bottom here, we want them to match up exactly. So once you have all that done, you need to make a tube liner. So what we like to use is a heavy duty Monarch twill. You can make the tube with that. So we know our legging part is quite wide, and then it gets in on a bit of a angle. So now I'm going to tell you how you know what the size of these panels need to be. We know how we went through about how big this panel is to fit our leg up here, but in order for the bottom of this panel here to fit the opening of our moccasin properly, where you don't, not all bunchy, what you need to do is you need to measure the circumference of that opening. The measurement for the bottom of this panel, so that tube fits our opening of our moccasin perfectly, what we do is we measure all the way the circumference. So from the corner of the vamp to this corner of the vamp, and then all the way around. So it is 17.5 inches all the way around. So what you do with that 17.5 inches is it's the same thing as here where we added those 2 inches. So we add 2 inches, so it's 19.5. Now what you do with that is we're adding the 2 inches because we have all those seam allowances. So once you add the 2 inches, then you're going to divide the 19.5 by 4, and that's going to give you the measurement of each of the bottom of these panels. And that's before they're sewn together. So once you do that, then you're going to be ready to sew your tube to the foot. And when you do that, you want to make sure you have the right legging. So what you need to do is find center of the front, center of the back, and then you're going to start tacking it. You get your welt, which is a piece of leather. Like this is a welt here, like on her vamp, a welt on her heel. And we're going to place it on that mark and place it right on that welted at the back of our heel. And then this is where you're going to have to start tacking. You're going to tack that center heel of the moccasin bottom to the center heel of that top tube. This is where it could get a little complicated because you're turning inside out. And I find it easier. Otherwise, it's hard to sew if you put it all inside out at this point. So what you do is you tack it around only one side. So we use the welt, measure it to this moccasin opening. And we know that this corner should match the corner of this burgundy. So where this seam matches the black, it should meet this corner. So then you tack it in this corner. You can tack it a few times in between here. And the thing is just to ease them together. So you want to make sure that they're even, that's not all bunchy or anything like that. And tack it in the middle. And if you want, you could tack them more often because depending if you're working with commercial hide, it has more tendency to be stretchy. So if I was using commercial hide, I would tack it more often. And if you have hometown hide that's stretchy, you could tack that more often as well. With our homemade hide here, you can notice that there's no stretchy give to it at all. So once you have that done, you are going to overhand stitch it from here to here. And then that's when we turn this tube inside out. And then we can tack and finish sewing this part. So now we're going to tack, make sure that this is even all the way around because we want this corner of the vamp to end at this black, where the black joins the burgundy. Yeah, just an overhand, not too deep or too close together, otherwise you'll never press the seam down. It'll be a thick ridge rubbing on your leg. Then you knot it off. Then you're going to turn it the right way. So you'll have this welt showing here. What I do is I take my scissors handles and I rub the seam on the inside. To press it flat, and then you're gonna remove this welt. So trim it down. Close enough, but be careful you don't cut your mukluk. It's better to cut a little extra when you first go around, and you can always go back and trim it flatter. So here you can go back if it's a little too much and trim so that you're able to see it a little better. And then that's how you attach that back part of your foot. Now to complete it, what we're going to do is, because we don't want a large amount, you don't sew the front part from the inside, otherwise you have that big ridge. So you take your outside lining in your canvas, and then you trim it down. And what you'll do is sew it from the outside across this, so overhand it this way. And because my beadwork comes down and it's going to run into the seam, I'm not going to add the canvas to here. I'm just going to use the lining, which is a very durable material. It's a monarch twill, so it's heavy duty cotton. So you're just going to sew these two together. This stitch, this seam won't be seen because it's going to be underneath your vamp. So you want to make sure that you're catching that inner lining of the tube here, as well as the melton on the top. So the thread that we're using is the heavy duty nylon upholstery thread. And with the wax, it stays longer. So you sew that, knot it off. And then we're going to attach this part. So what you do, it's going to get stitched up here in the front of your mukluk like that. So just to make it a little nicer, what I will do is I'll use the pinking shears. So they got the little angle, like little triangles. And I don't trim that much off. I just want it helps too to keep your stitches consistent in like width when you're sewing this down. And then this can be sewn down, and then your mukluk would be complete, other than to finish tacking between each pleat up here on the top. And if you want, you could add fur in this middle section. And then you could add pom-poms or tassels to the end of your 4-strand braid. And then your mukluk would be complete.